The 6-month-long war in Ukraine has brought to the fore yet another point of friction between Russia and NATO. Great power competition in the far north. The war to control the icy heights of the Arctic. Now NATO's chief, Jens Stoltenberg, is saying that the 30-member military grouping should prioritize a military presence, an active military presence in the Arctic. His comments come amid heightened concerns in the West about Russia's increasing military activity in the polar region, and this is following 6 months of the war in Ukraine. On Crux Decode, how real are these fears of the militarization of the Arctic? Could Russia use its Soviet-era military bases to station heavy-duty missiles and fighter aircraft in the Arctic? Could there be competition among newer powers like China in the race to the Arctic? And most importantly, how will NATO respond? Will a no-holds-barred military race disturb the delicate ecological balance in this highly sensitive territory? In an interview with the Welt am Sonntag newspaper in Germany, Stoltenberg, the chief of NATO, said that the Arctic was of great strategic importance to the organization. He went on to say that NATO must increase its presence in the Arctic. He said the Defense Alliance is already investing in maritime reconnaissance aircraft to be able to get a clearer picture of what exactly is going on in the far north. But that NATO will have to continue to step up its efforts. Stoltenberg also justified this by saying that Russia has recently intensified its activities in this area, which is highly rich in resources. He claims that Russia is reopening its Soviet-era military bases. It is also stationing and testing state-of-the-art new weapons there, like hypersonic missiles. Now, here's the interesting thing. Hypersonic missiles do not follow the regular parabolic loops that normal missile systems do. They follow an irregular pattern of flying in a low Earth orbit and then sharply descending down. Firing them from the Arctic would make it doubly harder to track down for conventional radars or air warning systems. And by the way, it's not just Russia. China, too, is increasingly interested in the Arctic. The Arctic is an intensely resource-rich area, whether it's minerals or petroleum products, and not to mention, of course, natural resources like wood. The region is also becoming increasingly important for shipping because of climate change. As the world's waters warm and the snow melts, there could be newer shipping routes that pass through the Arctic, both into Western Europe as well as into North America. China, which describes itself as a near-Arctic state, not a full Arctic state, it in fact plans to create what is called a polar Silk Road. China plans to benefit from the receding ice caps to create new maritime routes in what it calls the polar Silk Road. Remember, China has already invested close to $1 trillion in its Belt and Road initiative. They could complement their traditional shipping routes into Western Europe with one that goes through the polar Silk Road. The proposal would include building the world's largest icebreaker fleet, also at the same time allowing for new shipping routes for the mineral resources that China's industrial economy so badly needs. But if China is eyeing the Arctic, then can the United States be far behind? In this great power competition between the world's two largest economies, the United States, keen not to be left behind, has just announced last week that it's going to appoint a new special ambassador at large for the Arctic region. This is the first time ever that the United States is appointing such a high-level diplomat for a position such as this in the Arctic. The plan, which of course would still need full approval from the Senate, it basically is aimed at promoting American interests and American cooperation along with its allies and partners in the Arctic region. That is what a statement from the US State Department said. The polar region, of course, includes territories that belong to Russia, to the United States, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and of course Sweden. The rapidly receding sea ice is enabling access to a range of highly valuable resources across the Arctic region. Now, in addition to energy reserves, there are also critical minerals, fisheries, newly opened shipping lanes, all of which could potentially help reroute global trade. And mind you, this is not just physical connectivity that we're talking about, or maritime connectivity that we're talking about. It is also digital connectivity. These new areas around the Arctic could help enable high-speed internet connectivity between Europe and Asia. The ability to exploit newly available Arctic resources is also drawing increasing interest. It's not just countries or state actors, it is also commercial actors who are interested in this region. Even far-away non-Arctic power nations like China and Japan have been pouring in both political and financial capital into this region. So as new commercial relationships emerge in the Arctic, Russia and China in particular are increasingly collaborating on development of the Arctic. It is a very simple plan, a plan in which China provides the capital, Russia brings in its energy and infrastructure experience and expertise, and together it makes for a formidable partnership in the Arctic. At the same time, Russia has also been militarizing the Arctic territory. It is reopening Soviet-era military bases. It is also investing in new Arctic-specific technologies. Russia is also conducting extensive war games in the region. All of this, of course, has prompted NATO countries, led by the United States as well as Norway, to conduct their own military games in the region. All of this is to try and preempt, or to counter, if you will, the potential emergence of a Russia-China alliance in the region. Now, Russia and China's relationship is also nuanced. Both countries have their own competing interests in the Arctic. Unlike in other areas, interactions between Beijing and Moscow have proceeded at a rather cautious pace when it comes to joint exploration in the Arctic. But that is only for now, and no one quite knows how that may change in the future. One pressing factor, of course, is increasing military activity in the region, which continues to elevate the risk of a misunderstanding. There is also the real risk of an outside conflict spilling over into the Arctic. What is of particular concern, of course, is the absence of an official security body for these various state players through which they can address some of these regional defense concerns. Now, with newer players, commercial relationships, and of course extensive military build-up in the Arctic, there has been an attendant increase in international tensions. Commercially, strengthening ties between Asia and Europe, deepening levels of Chinese investment, and Russia's emerging primacy are all generating a pushback by the United States. Militarily speaking, Russia's extensive defense build-up and military exercises have created a potentially more volatile region. Against a backdrop of heightened US-Russia tensions, as well as the wider uncoupling between US and China, the Arctic is emerging as a new arena of great power competition. Now, who will emerge winner in this region? That'll have a great bearing on the new Cold War, the 21st century Cold War, and how it plays out in other theaters.